Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's the best podcast on the internet, isn't it? Best
That's
ever podcast.
that's what I've heard.
Yeah, from me. I told you. I sent you an email. I was like, dude, I think our podcast is the best podcast ever. And
But
you didn't
I
reply.
I trust your opinion, man. So
And I've never lied to you, not once. Um, so we're gonna talk about some stuff. We're gonna mention Survivor Series a little bit. Don't know if you guys know this, but Survivor Series happened a few days before the recording of this episode, and I kind of liked it.
hmm
You know, we've been slagging off the WWE a lot this year, and for good reason because you know, Money in the Bank match, etc. You know, there's been some questionable thing, the whole retribution angle. You know, been some
hmm
stuff that they've definitely dropped the ball on. But like every so often they'll drop in a good match and you're like, okay, this is fun. Survivor Series, I thought it had a couple of really good matches.
Yeah, I'd go so far as to say maybe three, which were really
I
good.
would I would say three, and I assume we're talking about the same three here. Um, I assume one of those was our Truth versus the Gobbledygooker on the pre-show.
Of course, that was a Stone Cold classic.
Did you actually see that?
Yeah, yeah,
Did you see the bit? Well, because first of all, it was clearly Drew Gulak because as soon as he won the belt, like he shouted, like, "What do you think of that, gobbledygooker?" or something, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was clear to him. But then when he ran away, like his leg fell off.
yeah.
I'm
And
like,
then the camera lingered on them as they were running away for way too long as well. So,
you could just
like,
see them stopping and just.
yeah,
Oh God! I mean, hey, 24/7 title has given us some comedy.
there you go. I don't think that was the comedy they meant to give us, but we'll take
What?
it.
Well, I'll take it. That made me laugh, and nobody died. So it's a great spot, Um, so I want to talk about real briefly before we get to the meat of this podcast. I want to talk about Survivor Series. The Survivor Series men's match was okay.
hmm
Like it was fine. It was, nothing amazing happened. And the Survivor Series women's match was strange. I loved the finish. I don't know about you. I cracked up at the finish.
Mm.
I really liked that. But a lot of it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, the thing that confused me about the finish in that one is they're trying to turn Lana face and make her popular and stuff, and build sympathy for her. That's basically what this whole thing's been
Mhm.
about with the whole, putting her through a table every week on Raw. But yeah, so that's the route they're going. They're trying to build sympathy, but her picking up like a fluke win and then celebrating it like she did anything to earn that win is like that's not a babyface move. That's not the kind of
Right.
thing that you want to you're gonna see that happen and then you think, oh yeah, she did really well then. And it's like, no, it's just baffling. I don't really understand what the mindset was for that finish, even though, like you say, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, dude, I loved it. But yeah, it didn't make any sense. And like you can tell that the angle they're going down, like you said, is a sympathetic kind of babyface route for Lana. You know, you see how she's been bullied and how she's been put through a table 9 times.
Mm.
And I talk about that for just a moment. Like every week they would just put Lana through a table, right?
Yeah.
First of all, they had Nia Jax doing it. I'm sorry. They had Miss Jax doing it, which already is bad news.
Mm.
I've had my fill of Nia Jax already. I no more, please. Which is a shame that she's directly involved in this angle. It's like I like the angle, I just don't like the people involved in it.
Yeah.
Because Lana, well, I'll get to Lana in a second. Let me finish this fucking 9 tables thing first. I'm just that's not a good way to get sympathy on anybody because you just look like a fucking idiot. going through a table 9 times in a row. Like, nobody does that. Nobody's ever done that. And
Mm.
Lana's really small,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If Lana gets put through a table 9 times and just keeps turning up, you're gonna be like, "Well, I guess going through a table doesn't hurt that bad," right? Because
Yeah.
Lana took it 9 times. Good God, and she's still going. She's small, she's still going. Maybe getting thrown through a table isn't a big deal after all. So that makes that look stupid. Second of all, it's not a good way how is that a good way to build heat? Because they're not focusing on the bullying part. They're
Mm.
focusing on just throwing her through the fucking table. It doesn't make any sense. And like they tried to hint at the bully stuff in the match, in the Survivor Series match, which didn't work either because like first of all, you had Nia Jax is yelling at her like she's a child. Again,
Yeah.
Nia Jax is the wrong person to have in this because she's just not good at anything. Somebody said to her, "You have to bully Lana," and she's like, "All right, I'll just rub her face in the mud." What do you think of that? I'll steal her lunch money. Yeah, I'm a bully. I'm like, that's not what bullying in the workplace means, right? It's not just being a child about it. Like, it's a serious thing. And if they made it into a serious thing, it would work. And also, they made her stand outside of the ring after Lana had already started to make a comeback.
Yeah.
Like, you've already seen her doing good. So, like, no, get out of here.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
didn't make any sense at all. Because in that brief moment that she was in the ring, it wasn't like she looked bad or out of place or anything, or she screwed it up. She just, she was wrestling like everyone
Right.
else was.
Now, if they'd have said something like, well, they don't want Lana to take all the shine off them, they want the glory of the match. They don't think Lana should have that kind of time. But they didn't do any of that. They just
No.
said, stand outside the ring, right? Which is stupid. But Lana's not the right person for this angle. Nia Jax isn't the right person because she's terrible. Lana's not the right person because how are we supposed to get sympathy on her? Like,
Yeah.
fucking, she's been a heel most of her career.
Mhm.
All we've seen of her from like the last what 5, 6, 7 years is her
Mhm.
being a heel with some brief turns in the middle, but really she's been a heel for the majority of her career, right?
Yeah.
So to have her go straight from being a heel to just being bullied, I'm like, well, you can see why, because you were a heel, right? A
Yeah.
heel's a bad guy. People don't like the bad guy, so you can't be a heel and then complain that people don't like you. That's part of the job, right? You can't get any babyface heat towards that angle because why? They've given us no reason to care about Lana before this.
Mm.
So why would they? I think it's a good idea if they did it right, but once again, didn't do it right. So yeah, that match weird, but like it was kind of funny. Um,
I'll
the
tell you what
tag,
I liked about it the
yeah.
most was the when it came down to Bianca Belair and she was kind of running wild on everyone and looking really good. It was good to
Mm,
see her get that little spotlight moment, really.
right, because like, when was the last time she was used like this?
Well, exactly. Probably last year's Survivor Series.
Right, I haven't seen her on pay-per-view in a long time, right?
Mm.
And you'd think that they would be showcasing her more, but nope, none of this shit. Like, cool. Yeah, that was nice to see her like actually do something.
Mm.
Um, but maybe we'll see her again next Survivor Series.
Here's
Seems to
hoping.
seems to be the way things go. All right, tag team match. New Day versus Street Profits. A lot of fun.
Mhm.
Dang good match. Um, but I don't know what else to say. This is really good.
Well, I was gonna say, we talked previously about the Young Bucks and how for weeks they were like supposedly showing like these subtle hints of aggression, like hinting towards a heel turn, but it just looked like they were wrestling their normal matches.
Hmm.
I thought the New Day here did a phenomenal job of doing like, being more aggressive and being like the subtle heels just of the match.
Hmm.
Like the way they kind of isolated Montez Ford and, were like going after the ribs and stuff and everything like that. It made them, you know, come across as like the heelish team, and so you kind of get behind the Street Profits to, make the comeback and ultimately pick up the win. So I thought that. worked really well, and well, they just knocked it out the park as well. They had a really good, fun tag team match.
Yeah, like that's a good point because going into that match, both of them are faces.
Mm.
So like WWE often have booked themselves into a corner when it comes to Survivor Series and having face versus face matches, as we've briefly talked about before.
Yeah, and heel versus heel.
Yeah, they just can't do it right. But here we have two like face teams, and you could tell that the New Day still are the New Day. They weren't just like all in all, fucking cheating and
Mm.
nut shots and all that shit. They weren't going like full heel, but at the same time, you could tell that they had a little bit more aggressive. They had a little bit more aggression to them, and so they were kind of like the de facto heels in that match, in that moment. You know,
Mm.
so like that's a really. But then again, like those guys are so good, they're so experienced. I would expect no less from them. But yeah, it made both teams like really good.
Yeah.
My one problem is that Xavier Woods came out in his Gears of War outfit.
Well, yeah, they all did.
Yeah, but Xavier Woods' Gears of War outfit doesn't have curdy shoes.
Ah, boo.
This is ridiculous. I ain't buying that. I'm not buying that DLC. I mean, I'm not buying the game anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Never
Whatever.
mind.
Oh well. All right, good fun match. Um, Bobby Lashley versus Sami Zayn. I
Hmm.
thought this was funny. It played up to both their strengths. It wasn't a fucking phenomenal match, but like, you got exactly what character both of those people are playing immediately,
Yeah.
perfectly. You know exactly who they are and what kind of champions they are. And I thought on that end, it did a really good job.
It's pretty much like an extended squash, really, which is
Yeah.
kind of the way it should have been anyway. Like I don't say it as like a bad thing, but yeah, like
Hmm. Right.
Bobby Lashley,
Exactly.
he's the dominant, US champion, and Sami Zayn's the guy who kind of does whatever it takes to kind of sneak through the back door and whatnot. So
Mhm.
yeah, they like you say they played their roles perfectly, and um, like I didn't quite see it though. Did MVP actually trip Sami Zayn towards
No,
the end of the match?
that was my favorite part. No, he most certainly did not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, boy, Sami Zayn is working his ass off here. Um, I love this stuff, man. I love the character he's been doing. Like I
Mm.
was thinking after that match, I was thinking, do you remember the match he had at WrestleMania
Yeah, yeah.
against Daniel Bryan? I think it was, and like he got his ass beat for like 20 minutes and then fucking scored a roll up or something, and you're like, this
Yeah.
is wonderful. You know what I mean? Like it's just so good because it's just it's exactly what we were talking about. Like the nuances between the two of them. They're both heels, but in very different ways.
Mm.
And you get that across. They're not the same. They have like these different personalities to them, and I think it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Even if the match itself is a bit meh.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's again, it was supposed to be, so that's all fine. Um, Asuka versus Sasha Banks. This is what the 18th time I've said this on a podcast, but that was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
I loved it. I really liked that match because some of the other ones, there's going to be kind of like a screwy finish or something like them at SummerSlam, and they did another match some other time where you're like, I feel like there's going to be some kind of stupid shenanigans.
Yeah.
Um, whereas this was just them having a great match.
Mhm.
Very
Yeah.
happy with that. Loved it. Um, and then was the main event, right?
Yeah. The women's match was before the main event, but we've already talked about that. But yeah.
Yeah. So I really liked this match. It was really long.
Yeah, it kind of started out a bit slow for my liking, but
Hmm.
then once it did kick into gear, it really kicked into gear.
Yeah, and like I'm not a huge fan of like too many like false finishes at the end.
Mm,
So like I'm a little bit about that, but overall I thought it was a lot of fun.
yeah.
Both guys still look really good, really
Mhm.
good. And I like the way the finish of it just it works for Drew because he didn't really lose, and it works for Roman Reigns because that's the character he's playing right now.
Mm.
I thought pretty good, you know. I've been enjoying myself up to this point. I really was.
Do you remember that Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre had a match at last year's WrestleMania?
No.
No, I don't remember that match at all, but I kind of read after watching this one that this was way better than their previous match. I was like, "What? What previous match?" I have zero memory of that whatsoever, but this goes to show, like, with this one being as good as it was, like, how far both guys have come, like, over the last, best part of 2 years now. Like, Drew McIntyre's really grown into the role as WWE champion, and Roman Reigns, obviously, like, with this heel turn, he's like, digging into like a new sort of personality and gimmick and whatnot that we've not seen from him before, and it's just like elevating his work to a whole new level. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I thought that they had that match and no one seems to remember it, but
No, dude, I
yeah.
don't remember it at all. And I know I watched that WrestleMania, but that's the thing. That's what happens every WrestleMania is that they're so long that you just forget a lot of the stuff that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because just at some point you're just like, all right, here it is. Um, I'm gonna have to go watch that again, or
Yeah.
maybe I'll just watch this Survivor Series one again. I remember last year's Survivor Series been pretty good too.
Yeah, considering the build up isn't brilliant going into these shows, and they kind of, especially this time around, they went into this, way too soon after the last draft. So,
Hmm.
like, trying to build these brand rivalries and stuff doesn't really work, especially when you got like the Raw Men's Survivor Series 10 team, which is mostly made up of guys who are on SmackDown as of however many weeks ago. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's they don't do a good job of building that side of it up, but the wrestlers, by and large, deliver. So
Mm. Right. We were talking about how shitty the build up was last week, weren't we?
yeah, yeah.
Like some of this really sucks. But hey, man, great show.
Mm-hmm.
So it ended with a little tribute to the Undertaker
Yes.
because it was 30 years since we first saw the big old scary Undertaker, Survivor Series 1990, a
Mm-hmm.
show that I've never watched. Um, Probably because of like the gobbledygooker. You know what I mean? Like you hear so much about that show because every year it's the gobbledygooker. Remember how stupid that was? Haha. Just kind of puts you off watching the show itself. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I'm like, I've never seen that show. I've never seen the debut of the Undertaker. I'm sure it was great, but it's been 30 years since he has been dead, I suppose. And they did a tribute to the Undertaker, which was very nice. And they started the tribute by bringing out loads of his cool wrestling friends.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, here we go. We got some of his best friends. Mick Foley, which was nice. I love seeing Mick Foley. They brought out the Godwins,
Yeah, yeah.
and they brought out the Godwins, and I'm like, and I know what the Godwins look like. I was very familiar with Midian. Um, and like when he would have been around when I started watching.
Mm-hmm.
And the Godwins came out. I'm like, I don't know which one's which. Dude, if you put that picture in front of me, I'm like, I couldn't tell you if that's the Godwins or not.
Oh
No
wow.
fucking idea. They look totally different.
They have aged a hell of a lot more than most of the other people who came out.
Well, Mick Foley, God, I love Mick Foley, but sometimes when you see him walking around, you're like, dude, you know, he looks more and more like Santa Claus every year.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he does it on purpose. He loves Christmas. Who else came out? Like they played the Too Cool music, and I'm like, what the fuck? Scotty Too Hottie's coming out,
Yeah, I thought of that as well.
and then Rikishi came out, and I was like, oh, I just the randomness of Scotty Too Hottie coming out. Oh boy, that I was so excited. Not to say I wasn't excited about Rikishi, I'm just saying, Scotty 2 Hotty would have been nicer.
Mhm.
And then Triple H and Shawn Michaels, of course, come out. And then Kane comes out, and he gets like the full gimmick. He has the mask on, he has his old like wrestling gear on, and like nobody else bought. I mean, the Godwins put on like dungarees or whatever, but like they're still dressed pretty smartly.
Yeah.
And then Kane comes out like Kane, and like okay. I mean, I'm sure at some point the WWE have definitely admitted that Glenn Jacobs is Kane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They had Glenn Jacobs as a on-screen personality at some point,
Yeah.
but no, they're sticking with it. And I thought this is gonna be nice. This is gonna lead to like a little Kane Undertaker moment. And then they do like a video package of the Undertaker, and it cuts to Vince McMahon in the ring by himself. None of the I no, none of them were there. Where'd they go?
Yeah.
They brought all these legends out, and we're like, here they are in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I get that they were all backstage anyway, which isn't cool. And I get that putting a wrestling show on in the middle of a pandemic isn't cool either, especially like Survivor Series where there's like 10 people in the ring at one time. Probably not cool. But I'm like, come on, man. A little bit of. But like, so Vince McMahon is like, hey, Undertaker, you rule. And then he comes out and does a typically long ass entrance
Mm.
in an incredibly short entrance round.
Yeah.
But he milked that for all it was worth. Oh, before he came out though, there was that weird fucking thing.
Oh, yeah, what the hell was that about?
There was this big like fucking construction thing. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of object,
Mm.
and I'm like, whatever. And then it started like I guess it was like a Tesla coil or something because it was like sparking.
Yeah, yeah.
And at first, I didn't think about it till afterwards. But at first, I thought they're just playing chip tune music of the Undertaker's theme tune.
Yeah, same.
But then were they? Was it that machine? Was that machine like making that noise? Was it playing?
Apparently. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I thought the same. I thought, hang on, this sounds like an 8-bit
Fucking
version from like an old school SNES game or something.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It sounded really weird. I thought at first my audio on my TV had fucked up. I was like, oh shit. But yeah, apparently it's supposed to sound like that.
Well, that was the thing. I was like, if this is a chiptune version of the Undertaker's theme music, like they fucked up. Like you could have got a way better one than this, you know? So that's what I was like. Oh, it's probably that. Whatever the fuck that giant machine was. Where'd he get one of them? What's it for? Like, how do you order that?
Yeah.
What the? Where does it go? Can you program it to do other people's theme music, or is that just it? Is that all they have the use for? I'm very confused about this entire thing.
Mm.
I'm gonna make the thumbnail of this just whatever the fuck that machine was. And not talking about the Undertaker. And then the Undertaker came down, and he did his spiel, and he cut a promo, and he told himself to rest in peace.
Yeah.
I mean, which we all knew he was gonna do, but it still sounded weird. And he does his signature Undertaker pose, and then they did the sweetest thing in the world where they kind of cut the camera so like Undertaker was on the right hand side doing his pose, and they had like a hologram of Paul Bearer
Mm.
opposite him with the urn, and
Yeah.
they kind of piped in a little bit of Paul Bearer audio,
Oh, yes.
and it was like that was really touching.
Mm.
That was very very sweet of them, you know, because Paul Bearer was a big part of that character, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like you couldn't have Kane there too. Kane's like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Supposed to be brothers.
Yeah, and Paul
So
Bear is supposed to be Kane's dad as well.
exactly. What the hell, man? Kane's like off to the side. Like I didn't even get this kind of reception when I left, and I'm a mayor. You know, the Undertaker's not the mayor of anywhere.
Not as far as we know.
Probably for the best because he's a bit of a Republican.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to do a little talk about the Undertaker, I guess, because like we said, it's been 30 years. And he seems as if he is officially retired. And as we all know in wrestling, there are two things you can be certain of in wrestling. Uh, if there's a marriage, it'll go off without a hitch. And if somebody retires, they stay retired forever. Those are the two most common questions about pro wrestling.
Mhm.
So you're an old school. You started watching wrestling before I did.
Yeah, I'd say probably like 89, something like that.
So did you see the debut of the Undertaker?
I don't remember it at all, to be honest. I remember him as a character on like Superstars back in the day, and how like intimidating and scary and stuff he was as like a 6 year old kid. But yeah, I don't remember the actual debut, which is, I mean, looking back on it now, it's kind of a weird debut as well to have him be a part of like the one of these random Survivor Series teams and stuff. And I think he was teaming up with like the $1 Million Man and the Honky Tonk Man and Greg the Hammer Valentine. But he didn't even survive the match as well. He took out Coco Beware, and then I think he took out Dusty Rhodes as well before getting counted out. Um, so yeah, it was kind of a strange one, really. But to see where he came from, like after that, like I remember really well, like a year later when it was the Survivor Series where he was challenging Hulk Hogan for the WWF title, and that's when Ric Flair showed up and like put the chair under Hogan when Undertaker was doing a tombstone to him, so he tombstoned him on the chair, so he stole the title, and then like they basically switched it back a few days later or whatever. But yeah, I remember that really well. But yeah, like he's been such a constant in wrestling for the last 30 years that it just feels weird that he's not going to be there anymore, even though he hasn't been like a full-time, wrestler for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
His presence is always kind of still felt. Like the possibility of him coming back for another match at some point, whereas now it seems like, this is the end for real this time.
Well, I mean, they got to go back to Saudi Arabia sometime. You know what I mean? Maybe this isn't the end of the Undertaker. I I mean, I respect the Undertaker. I was never like the biggest fan of the Undertaker when I started wrestling,
Mm.
and when I started watching wrestling, but like you could tell, the guy was good. Um, for a big guy, he was really good. Did a lot of fun stuff,
Mm.
and was very popular with people. Very, very popular. I really liked. I mean, because I started watching in the year 2000, I really liked Biker Taker,
Yeah.
but I liked it because I thought the concept of him being a dead man like was a bit silly. But when they, but you, I mean, obviously it was a bit silly. But like once they kind of reinvented him as just a guy with a motorbike with a cool nickname, like if his nickname is the Undertaker, it means you know what you're in for. He's gonna fucking kill you, right?
Hmm.
That's cool. I'm like, this gimmick actually works for this guy. Totally, totally works. And he's not like, crucifying people or he's not making lightning shoot out of his hands or whatever. This makes sense. Although you can see the appeal of the dead man, of course, which he did after he went back to that. He definitely had a lot more mileage with it, I suppose. Um,
Yeah, but I think the best thing about like the like American Badass gimmick and stuff was it kind of opened him up as a wrestler because before that, like especially in the early years, he was kind of a slow, plodding wrestler who like did lots of chokes and big boots, and that was about it. Like he didn't really have any classic matches. Well, until sort of like 97-ish, really, when
hmm
he had a few
yeah.
matches with like uh, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and stuff. But yeah, with the American Badass gimmick, he actually became like a proper wrestler in a way,
Yeah.
or he was allowed to anyway, and that sort of carried over even when he returned to like the original sort of dead man style gimmick.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that because like he really was kind of totally living and working the dead man gimmick with being a big man in wrestling, like taking that very seriously. And I felt like, yeah, once he was the dead or the American Badass, it felt like he was moving around faster and he was doing more stuff and he was, he was keeping up with the younger dudes,
Oh yeah.
which was super cool to see, because he was a big, really big guy, and he still is, you know. Yeah, so I like that. Obviously, I think that well, he's in one of the matches that definitely solidified the fact that I was a wrestling fan.
Mhm.
It's you know what match it is because it's probably in your list as well.
It's got to be Mankind Hell in the Cell.
Exactly. I think both you and me were trying to rack our brains to think of a really shitty Undertaker match. It's gotta be Undertaker versus Miavan. Um, yes, I mean, God, good God, right?
Mhm.
Even today, you can still watch that match. And it gives you chills because you're like,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable what happened in it.
Mhm.
And like, really, there's only really two spots in the whole match,
Yeah.
but those two spots, good God, you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of match I would show to people if if they weren't fans of wrestling.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, there's two kinds of matches that I would show people like that. I would show them something like Finn Balor versus Kyle O'Reilly as a very serious kind of competitive match. But I also show them this because I'm like, you can't fake that.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't fake any of that. You want to, you fake knocking yourself out and having your tooth shoved up your nose? No, sir. And the Undertaker had what, a broken foot during that match?
Yep.
So if you notice, he jumps. He's on the top of the cell, and he accidentally choke slams Mankind through the cell, which is just still horrific to watch. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And he climbs back into the ring. He like jumps down, you know,
Mhm.
on a broken foot. And I'm like, obviously, fucking Mankind. Let's be honest, took the brunt of the damage in that match. It's still, worth mentioning that that guy did that with a broken foot. Like he climbed all the way up to that top of that cell and shit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fair play to him. But also, he did lots of other very good matches. You talked about Shawn Michaels.
Mhm.
You know, he had what 98. He had a lot of work with Steve Austin.
Yeah, yeah.
The guy can work. And then after that, you had him working with against and then with Keane and stuff that I always was very entertained by. I always loved the Brothers Destruction. You know,
Yeah.
I liked that because I thought they looked great, just like standing together. Like that's a team. Like how do you beat those guys?
Absolutely,
It's
yeah.
it's perfect for wrestling, and I get why they had them feud against each other. But like by the time they became, he was the American Badass, and Kane was, he had the kind of different outfit, like more like the vest kind of top.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The two of them stand side by side, look fucking awesome.
Yeah.
So I always like that too. Uh, oh god, we could go on and on about fucking great Undertaker matches.
I mean, he had like a huge series of matches with Edge in like sort of like 2008, I think it was, where
Yes.
this was where Edge was like just becoming like a main event player. Really, I think he'd kind of flirted with the title maybe the year before or like 2 years before,
Hmm.
when he cashed in the Money in the Bank. But this was like one of his first proper, runs on top of SmackDown. And yeah, him and Undertaker just had a great series of matches, which really elevated Edge as well, and kind of solidified him as one of the top guys in WWE. So that was how good Undertaker was. He it wasn't just like having great matches, but he could make opponents as well, like make their
I
careers.
I think that Undertaker definitely had a better career like post American Badass than he did pre American Badass
Hmm.
because his matches were better. He was working with like a lot of young guys, like you mentioned Edge, but we all know he put Jeff Hardy in the map for that
Yeah,
hardcore
yeah.
match.
Absolutely.
Remember him working with Brock Lesnar in that Hell
Yeah.
in a Cell match?
Mhm.
JBL, good stuff there. CM Punk,
Yeah, yeah.
these are all great stuff. Like, I got a little wary of the Undertaker. Like I said, I was never like the hugest fan of him, but you can't deny when he was working matches, that fucking guy could go. He was putting on quality matches. I always my well, I always liked for a long time my favorite Undertaker match, aside from the Mankind match, was against Ric Flair at WrestleMania.
I was gonna mention that, yeah.
Because I think that's one. I think that's the kind of point where like the streak was really like a thing,
Mm.
and B, like where I really actually felt something for Ric Flair. Do you know what I mean? Like because Ric Flair was before my time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he was in WCW, which I didn't watch. So like he had recently kind of come over to the WWE. I'm like, who's this old dude? I know he was great in the past. I don't need to see him now. But good God, that match was really fucking good.
Yeah, and it came at a time as well where Ric Flair has said like multiple times over the years that he was at his lowest ebb, like he had no confidence whatsoever in his own abilities or anything after just being worn down by WCW pretty much.
But they did a really good job of that.
Yeah. So to again, it's like a testament to how good Undertaker was that he was able to drag that match out of Ric Flair and like instill that confidence in him, and bring back or help bring back the Ric Flair of old, which yeah, it's just he's that's how good he was.
Yeah, dude. Like it really made me because like going into that, you would look at that and think, Ric Flair versus the Undertaker. I think I know he's gonna win because Undertaker looks like such a big imposing dude. But like during the match, really, when Orn Anderson came in, hit that spine buster, I'm like, holy shit, Ric Flair is gonna win.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they got me. They really did. I really liked that match, man. That was a lot of fun. Um, what was your favorite? Here's the trick, because like I said, that used to be my favorite Undertaker WrestleMania match.
Mm.
So, what is your favorite Undertaker WrestleMania match? You can give me a couple. You don't have to, because it's hard.
Well, it's not hard at all for me. It's got to be the Undertaker Shawn Michaels match at WrestleMania 25.
Yes. Was it the
Uh,
first one or the second one?
that was the first one, I believe,
Yes. Oh my
and
goodness.
honestly, it's probably the greatest match in WrestleMania history. I think it was so good from start to finish, and exceeded expectations. Like even though you know both these guys are really good, they've got good chemistry and stuff, and obviously have the experience and everything on their side. But man, it was just one of those matches where like everything seemed to work out, and the crowd were amazing. Like hanging off every near fall and stuff, and they made you believe that Shawn Michaels could beat the streak and everything. It was just man, it was perfection.
Mm, dude. Yeah, that quickly became my number one WrestleMania Undertaker match because that shit was really good. But the second one was like also really fucking good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like the two of them back to back, you're like like that like the fact that the second one happened the year later, I think is quite impressive because it's a different match. Eh, but it's still really fucking good, you
Mm,
know. Um and then he did stuff with Triple H after that, which to me felt a little bit like anything you can do, I can do better, kind of from Triple
yeah,
H,
definitely.
which I don't agree with because not to say that they weren't good matches, because
Mm,
Triple H is a great worker, Undertaker is a great worker. I thought the Shawn Michaels ones were better.
yeah, without a doubt. I think the trouble with the Triple H matches is he has like a tendency to work the same formula when it comes to WrestleMania, like he pretty much has done for the last 20 odd years or so. So it ends up going way too long and dragging the match out and kind of, I don't know, almost losing the audience as well
Well,
the longer it
it,
goes on.
I think it goes on too long, but also he starts too fast.
Mm.
Like they'll start off like going outside and brawling at ringside and going over the ringside barrier. And that you're right, that does happen an awful lot with Triple H matches at WrestleMania. And it starts too quickly because you got to set the pace first. And if the
Yeah.
pace is already like breakneck speed, that to a point where 5 minutes into the match, two guys are selling their asses off, just dead on the canvas. You're like, this is going to be hard to get people to swallow another 15 minutes.
Mm.
You don't. That's why you don't want to go too fast. And you think Triple H would know that. But again, like you get what he was going for. He's trying to bring the electricity straight away. And while it is a formula that we've seen Triple H, it's also something that you wouldn't have seen that night at WrestleMania.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I kind of get it, but yeah, there's just something about Shawn Michaels, man,
Mm.
that he could. Oh God, I don't want this to turn into a Shawn Michaels appreciation thing, but he's really fucking good. We'll talk about him later.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about the Undertaker. So yeah, dude, like the guy's put on a lot of quality matches. Even God, if you wanted to go and say this, I would say that the Boneyard match against AJ Styles this year, even though it was a stupid cinematic match, I thought, well, that's clearly the best of the cinematic matches
Mhm.
because it was fun to watch. It wasn't like because you knew it wasn't going to be too gimmicky. You know
Yeah.
that the Undertaker is a dead man, so there's probably going to be some kind of like shenanigans involved on that end, right?
Mm.
You also know that AJ Styles isn't going to fall into a lake and then come out dressed differently, or shoot fireworks out of a fucking thing, or jump off a scissor lift backwards or whatever.
Mm.
He's ah, love it. So like you knew that there was going to be like a kind of like a more of a gritty edge to it. It wasn't like full out ridiculous like the Money in the Bank match like a month later.
Yeah, yeah.
It was fun to watch, and Undertaker looked good in it.
Mm.
So
I
you
mean,
could.
I wasn't a huge fan of it at the time, but I
Mm.
think because of the cinematic matches we've watched this year, it's definitely elevated my opinion of it a
Yeah,
lot.
it's got better just because everything else was just so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I can't disagree with that. God, we've seen some shit this year. I'd love for that to be like an end of year podcast. Like, what is the absolute worst shit we've seen this year? It's gonna be too hard to call. So really, when you think about it, Undertaker got out at the exact right time.
What do you think about the WWE's decision to end the streak at WrestleMania?
I I think the streak should have ended, and I think if the streak did end and it was Brock Lesnar, then that should have been the end of it.
Mm.
I don't. People say that Brock wasn't the right guy to do it. I think I think there's definitely an argument for Brock to be the guy, because Brock still did have a lot. When was that? 2010 or
Oh, jeez.
2012 or something around about that time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe 2012 or 13 or something. So
Mhm.
we're talking right since then. Brock Lesnar has went on to have a pretty good career.
Yeah.
He might not be there every week, whatever, but he's been portrayed as a guy who is very hard to beat
Mhm.
every time he appears, which perfectly, they didn't squander it. It would have been worse if it was fucking Fandango that beat the Undertaker, and then and then nothing happened, right? That would have been worse because they didn't capitalize on it. At least they did with Brock Lesnar. Lesnar had history with Undertaker from years
Mm.
and years before that, and that shit, I remember watching that. That was bloody. That was, those guys were really beating the fuck out of each other. So they had a rivalry. It makes sense. I don't hate Brock Lesnar being the guy to break the streak, but I don't like that they kept having WrestleMania matches after that, because then there's no point in even talking about the streak.
Mm.
You can't add more numbers. You know what I mean? Like once it's whatever 21 and 1. Oh yeah, if we do the maths, we should be able to figure out what year it was, right? It's like 21 and 1 or whatever. Like, you can't change it to like 24 and 1 or whatever it is,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
then it's no longer a streak.
Exactly, yeah.
There's no point in keep counting it. So like that should have been the last match, because I remember because then after that, it doesn't really matter. The point,
Mm,
like the whole point of the Shawn Michaels thing was to try and strive to get to that point, to be the one to break the streak. They made it such a big deal out of it, and rightfully so. They did a very good job with it. But they hyped it up so much as if it was a real big thing. And you would have imagined that once the Undertaker did lose the streak, there would be no incentive for him to come back to WrestleMania
mm,
because that was the whole thing and they built it up. So I have no problem with them doing it with Brock Lesnar. I would have done it a couple of years later,
yeah.
because then he could have worked with, Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt and yada yada in between that. Then when you think about it, if you get to like 2018, for example, and Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker, that's a really interesting sounding matchup. Because wasn't that the year we got Lesnar versus Goldberg instead? Was it 18
Uh,
or was that 17? Was it last year? It wasn't last year.
I can't remember. I think it might have been 2018.
Okay, so like instead of Lesnar versus Goldberg, which we all knew wasn't going to be a 5-star classic, wouldn't it have been interesting to have Lesnar versus Undertaker? And then if Lesnar beat the streak, you'd be like, whoa, holy shit. And
Hmm.
then if you had Lesnar going on a tear after that, beating up Roman Reigns and fucking whoever else, then you're like, fair enough, justified. Then again, after that, if Undertaker wants to pop up on different pay-per-views like Survivor Series or at, you know, Crown Jewel or whatever, fair play. But you could see why he wouldn't want to go back to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done. What do you think?
Well, I for the longest time I was always of the opinion that he should have never lost at WrestleMania and that streak should have just kept going.
Hmm.
Um, I understand why they gave it to Brock Lesnar because Brock had only really come back like the year before I think it was, and he'd had maybe about 2 or 3 matches where I think he'd lost against John Cena in his first match, and then I think his second and third matches were against like Triple H, and he lost one of those as well. So
Was that
he,
before or after he fought Punk? That
uh,
was 2013, I think, at SummerSlam,
yeah,
which was a really fucking good match.
yeah. But yeah, so like Brock almost needed like that big win to kind of put him back on track again. I thought so. Who bigger and better to do that than the Undertaker? But I don't know. At the same time, I think Brock Lesnar would have become that monster again anyway. Like
Yes,
with better booking, outside of WrestleMania. So to me, I think it should have been Roman Reigns who did end the streak, if anyone did.
right,
Because like when they did eventually do that match and Roman beat him, it didn't mean as much because he'd already been beaten by Brock Lesnar. So
right,
it just yeah, I don't know. It seemed like they didn't really think it out as much as they probably should have done. But hey ho.
right. It's because whenever Roman Reigns beat him, there were no stakes anymore. The fun of it
Mm,
was he had never lost a match at WrestleMania. Therefore, every WrestleMania, the stakes got a little bit higher. It was about you trying to be the one to break the streak. That was the important thing.
yeah.
So after that, once Roman Reigns fought him, he just beat the Undertaker, which in
Hmm.
itself is quite an achievement. But that's an achievement, that could have been done at any other pay per view. The mystique was that he never lost it at WrestleMania. Like that was the point. I
Yeah.
agree with you on Roman Reigns because I would have said, like, realistically, if you were looking at their roster for God, however long, 10 years, right? Let's look at the roster for the last 10 years. Like, realistically, who would you actually believably think could have broken the streak other than Brock Lesnar or Roman Reigns?
I think at one point maybe Bray Wyatt, but then they beat him like a drum, and he pretty much lost every single feud and match that he was in. So yeah.
Mm,
But yeah, aside from that, no one really.
yeah, I mean, it's got to be one of those two guys.
Mm,
So yeah, I think it made sense, but I know it's also a very divisive opinion. Not
yeah.
derisive. Fucking idiot. So yeah, that's the Undertaker. What else? You want to say anything else about the Undertaker?
Just that, it would have been nice for him to have his farewell in front of like a live crowd, really. Like it was all a bit artificial at Survivor Series with with the empty arena and stuff and the smoke and darkness and everything and the piped in like thank you Undertaker chants and stuff like that. It's like yeah, it's not really the ending I'm sure he would have imagined, all those years ago. But I guess what can you do in the situation we're in right now?
Right. I mean, he has been working for 30 years.
Mm.
So like, and he's made a shit ton of money.
Yes, yeah.
So let's not feel too sorry for him. One thing before we go, a very important question. What's your favorite Undertaker theme music?
Ooh. You know what? Oh man, this is tough.
I hope you're gonna say the one I think you're thinking of.
I was gonna say his ministry theme is like an all-time classic.
Yes, the fucking rock one.
Yeah, yeah,
With that
yeah.
guitar riff. Oh, that's the one I was gonna pick. I'm like, God, that fucking kicks ass.
Yeah.
Great song. And I'm like, why did like I get the fucking, you know, that's why I didn't like about the Undertaker was that it was so it was he had that Undertaker the funeral fucking march,
Mm.
and he had the hat and the cape or whatever. It was a bit too silly. And then once he was kind of the ministry, he had a bit of a different look, and the music fucking it sounded creepy and Undertaker-y, but it was unique to him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That music fucking ripped.
Yeah, it was badass.
Yeah, you're not gonna say Limp Bizkit? Like how weird is it to look back 20 years ago and go, The Undertaker came out to Limp Bizkit as the theme music.
Yeah.
What the
It's
fuck happened?
man,
I mean, I'm
strange
sure
times.
that's what the Undertaker like. No, it's not like if you asked Undertaker now, "Oh, are you bummed out that you didn't have the goodbye you wanted?" I'm sure he'd be like, "No, I'm bummed out that for fucking 3 years people associated me with Limp Bizkit."
Dear.
Is that what you're gonna stick with the Ministry?
Yeah, the only other one I was thinking was the one he kind of had after Limp Bizkit, which was like an in-house one called "You're Gonna Pay,"
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
which was pretty cool as well. Not as cool as the Ministry one, but still.
Didn't he have Metallica for a while?
He had it for the Boneyard match, didn't he?
Didn't he have Metallica like way back with Limp Bizkit times?
No, I know what you're getting confused with. He had Kid Rock, but it was Kid Rock doing a song which heavily sampled Metallica.
Kid Rock is such a prick.
Yeah, yeah.
God, what a fucking idiot. Do you remember when he did that song that was Sweet Home Alabama, right?
Yeah.
And it was Sweet Home Alabama, but it had a different name. And so
And
like everywhere you went, you heard this shitty Sweet Home Alabama song. I mean, he just made shit tons of money off Sweet Home Alabama.
another song called Werewolves in London as well, like the two of them mixed together.
Wait, is it the same? Is it also Sweet Home Alabama?
Yeah, it was that same song that he did, but he mixed Sweet Home
Oh, he mixed
Alabama
those two
and
songs.
yeah, yeah.
But the Sweet Home Alabama is so noticeable.
Oh yeah, well they
That's
both
the
are.
riff, those three chords.
Yeah.
Good God. Anyway, we're not talking about Kid Rock. Fuck that guy. I already thought that was Metallica. Who am I thinking of? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that's The Undertaker. I think we gave him a really good tribute. We were pretty good, pretty complimentary.
Yeah.
Anybody else who's listening to the show, if you've got a favorite Undertaker match, you think, well, tell you what, man, if you've got like an underrated classic match from The Undertaker that you think we should check out, let us know. Because I tell you what, I'm gonna go back and watch that Ric Flair one from WrestleMania.
Mm.
If you guys haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. It's a lot of fun, and definitely if you haven't seen him already, and if you haven't seen him already, what the fuck is wrong with you? But Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, watch them both. So fucking good. But if you've got any other suggestions for us, let us know. We'd love to hear them. We'd love to watch them. That'd be really nice.
Hmm.
Let us know what you thought about Survivor Series and The Undertaker and your favorite parts of his career. He's done a lot of stuff. And that's it, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Guess that's the show. We want to thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. It's very nice. Make sure to subscribe and like and share and do all that fucking stuff. I don't fucking know. You don't have to do. You don't have to do. You can do whatever you want. You're a free person. But we appreciate you listening to the show anyway. We'll be back next week with another fun episode. Hooray!
Whoop, whoop.
That's the spirit. So we'll see you guys later. We love you.
Bye.
Bye.